Welcome back to the Blue Frontier as Everton rescue a point late away at the Amex. Brighton won, Everton won. Beto, the birthday boy, with a very late equalizer with nearly the last kick of the game to get Everton into the top half, sitting in 8th place as we speak. Our summary starts with our first talking point, Shan, which is a bit of a surprise lineup from David Moyes today. As we were waking up, he goes with a 4 center-back approach. Clayson from our Discord before the match said 4 center backs, tall guys FC, set piece FC, blocks FC, let's go. I don't know that it exactly played out like that, but it was a really curious choice of lineup by Moyes, using Jake O'Brien at right back, Jarrad Branthwaite at left back, given that Mykolenko was apparently a late scratch for the matchday squad, picked up a knock in training. So Branthwaite, we knew that Moyes had speculated on his ability to play left back, and we got to see it today. We also see Nathan Patterson dropped, obviously, and Michael Keane returns after his suspension straight back into the lineup. Dwight McNeil also dropped. Like we talked about last week against Leeds, that not tracking back or whatever saw him relegated to the bench, and he did not appear as a sub. But in addition to the 4 center backs, Sean, we saw 4 center mids starting. Harrison Armstrong, Dewsbury Hall with his first start back from injury as well. Ghana and James Garner in midfield. What did you make of Moyes' lineup, and I think how it played out and how it impacted Everton's style of play today?
Yeah, it's just, for me, I was not, I would say, shocked, but I think to see kind of the 4 center backs like right in front of you, and I know he's kind of mentioned a few times with Jarrad playing left back, and of course that's what ended up happening today. I think the only thing I was a little bit curious of is the usage of Harrison Armstrong, right? As, of course, Ghana and Garner playing in that 2, that makes a lot of sense. KDH playing at the 10, that makes sense. But I think he didn't really have many options outside of benching McNeil, but it was almost inevitable that you felt like Tyler Dibbling wasn't going to start, just because it just feels like he's going to be continued to be used off the bench. My thought went on the Harrison Armstrong is just having another able body that's a little bit more defensively aware, and somebody that I think is going to track back and be a little bit more progressive. But then also, too, right, you have 4 center mids. I think it's a very inverted lineup, right? And Njai really the only true winger out there. And you saw it was pretty much a very ugly watch, right? Especially you look at the first half.
I mean, you kind of come to grips with the first half being diabolically bad. I mean, obviously no shots for Everton, so very, very poor. A lot of kind of changes to the team, and just a really, even though we're back closer to full fitness, the Jack Grealish now seemingly out for the remainder of the season per David Moyes. A huge blow, and Everton kind of trying to figure out what that means for the team in the lineup. But it's a weird group, and I think early on you saw some adjustments or some unfamiliarity bleeding through into the play. But agree with you. I thought Harrison Armstrong was kind of the outlier there, of like, both in terms of the narrative that's been crafted around David Moyes and using the younger players. Like, we don't see Asnu, we don't see Dibbling, but you have this 18-year-old who has been recalled from loan and has started or played in almost every single match since he's come back. So kind of dispelling maybe the narrative in some ways, and maybe asking more questions of what's going on with those 2 individual players, as opposed to it being this kind of referendum on Moyes' use of youth. But in other news, we also saw Charlie return to the bench, as well as Tamir Bunam. Both would come on as subs, which was great to see. So again, Jack Grealish, huge blow, but Everton elsewhere on the pitch, getting guys back, getting them back into the rhythm. So I think that bodes well for the remainder of the season. I think also encouraging today it was the second match in a row where we go down and we manage to fight in the face of adversity and come back to equalize and rescue points. I mean, things were looking pretty bad against Leeds on Monday. Now we get to Saturday. Obviously, the first half, pathetic, even though we weren't losing at the break. But then Gross scores what I think was a pretty good goal, and Everton leaving it very, very late, but not giving up. And I think you have to, again, give Moyes a little bit of credit for the effectiveness of some of the substitutes. I mean, he makes a triple sub, something we haven't seen much of, bringing on Dibbling, Charlie, and Tim for Dewsbury Hall, Armstrong, and Ghana. And I would say probably Charlie having the most impact of those 3 subs. Tim almost cost us a couple of times, and Dibbling had like 3 touches, so not super impactful. But then Nathan Patterson and Beto, obviously Patterson with a couple nice crosses into the box, looked lively getting up and down, and Beto scoring the winner. So thoughts on the consecutive rescuing points late, Sean, and the substitutes by Moyes?
I think with Everton. There's a lot of things you can say, but the ability for them to kind of grind points, right? Whether that be the last few years or even this year, it's a very good group of high character guys that I think they've had some bad performances, of course, this year, but I've been very pleased with a lot of the responses they've had in kind of tough moments. And I think this was, like you mentioned, James, I thought from a game state standpoint, I thought it was kind of a little bit better than what Monday was, where it was just truly like unacceptable at home, right? Premier League game on the road, I think you're going to have some of those games. But I thought he actually managed the subs very well today, right? You look at a 0-0 game, you have two chances to go ahead, you don't take them. Of course, they take theirs. And then he puts on, I think, a really good aggressive number of players that you're down 1-0, 80th minute. I think that's kind of, we give up the goal in kind of mid-70s, so it makes more sense, right? Where he probably didn't have maybe that specific plan. He adapted pretty well. And so, and like you mentioned, I think all of the subs were very appropriate, right? You look at Nathan Patterson, nice to see him build on kind of his string of good performances and get more minutes. And then the Beto sub for Barry, right? It's not a knock on Barry, by the way, had some excellent kind of interplay that it probably won't be seen on the box score. But once again, Beto is kind of a perfect sub in this moment, right? So I give David Moyes a lot of credit. I know the form, having two draws in the last two matches could be, against this competition, you might expect a little bit more. But I don't think it's really solely on the manager. I think also, too, personnel, it's kind of tough to find out your left back is it out very quickly. I might not agree with the four center backs, right? But I can understand why he would do something like that. Given the personnel, it'd just be interesting, right, when you look at the three center backs being very effective last week or again on Monday. Hopefully when you have healthy personnel, right, he goes back to that. I'd love to see that.
I think that's exactly right. And on the kind of turnaround theme, we talked a lot last match, Leeds coming back. So now Everton have picked up just 5 points from losing positions this season, 3 against Palace, obviously coming back and winning that one. But then Leeds and now this game. And that may not sound like a lot, and a lot of it's recent. It's really 3 results now, 3 matches, and we've had plenty more opportunities. But what I will say about, I think Moyes deserves a lot of credit, is even though we may not have come back and taken points from matches where we've gone behind or performed poorly, there usually is at least a change in the quality of performance. If we have a really bad first half, you very rarely see that carry over into the second period of play. And I think that goes partially to the mentality of the players and their willingness to kind of course correct and make changes, but also on the manager for setting the standard and demanding more from them when they're not delivering. So I'll give Moyes credit on that front. Before we go into the rest of the match, I think now we're on January 31st at time of recording, and the window is fast closing very fast. It closes on Monday. And in his post-match presser, David Moyes was asked by Joe Thomas of the Liverpool Echo if he thinks there's a chance of Everton signing anyone before the deadline, and Moyes said, yes, I do. So answering in the affirmative, and then we have this from the Bauble, which leaked or came out just before kickoff, I believe, so sparking a lot of dialogue. First, that Everton have submitted a loan offer with an option to buy for Chelsea's Tyrique George, and then shortly after the end of the game, Everton and Chelsea are now in advanced negotiations for George, agreement between the two clubs now close, and the final decision to come down to the 19-year-old left winger on where he sees his future. So Everton making moves late in the window for a player who has, I think, 4 appearances for Chelsea, 4 appearances at a senior level of football, but I think for the most part regarded as a pretty exciting prospect.
Yeah, I would agree, James, and I think that's actually, I know it's just 4 appearances, but you look at Chelsea and kind of the level of riches they have with their kind of talent base, and I don't know if they have 50 players still, right, but they have a lot of players, so getting 4 appearances in that squad, I would also say is quite an achievement, right, for a 19-year-old. So for me, I like the intent. I just wonder about the execution in regards to where he plays. Kind of see him more as a winger. I could possibly see him maybe play striker, but if we keep Beto right after the deadline, I don't think you look at that. So it's just interesting, right? We want a 19-year-old to be played, and we might get that, but it will be somebody on loan, and so I think it's a good option to have. You see in a day like today where David Moyes just might not trust Tyler Dibbling amongst a whole match, right? this could be an opportunity for us to have more options. Low risk, high reward, right? Especially if there's a buy option. Maybe Moyes sees something different with him. So I like the player. I think there's some real talent here. I think from a progression standpoint, he has some promise. But for us, it's just good to see some activity, right? Especially kind of, as we mentioned, we don't want to be the continued club that makes these kind of panic signings in January. So to me, you look at a player like this, his wages are going to be very minimal, right? So I think it's smart by the club to kind of look at a player like this. I just wonder where he fits in.
No, and I think it's a totally fair question to ask. I mean, at first glance, obviously, just positionally, it reads as a bit of a contingency plan given the Jack Grealish injury. He plays left wing. We have now seen Iliman Ndiaye play there 2 matches in a row, but looking for some additional depth in the back half of the season. As far as the profile of the player, I mean, I like him a lot. He's a little small, probably too small to play striker in a David Moyes setup, I would think, and then the age being a question. We just talked about Armstrong getting minutes, but then you have Dibbling and Asnew kind of frozen out, and George has far less top-level experience than either of those guys. I mean, Dibbling played almost a full season for Southampton. We know that Asnew has performed in La Liga. So it does make you wonder, like, what does Moyes see? We know he has final say over any transfer, so it would appear he's sort of greenlit this move. Not going to make any sweeping conclusions, but he just kind of wondering, like, does this guy help us right now? And even if he doesn't, even if the view isn't on the second half of the season, clearly this would be a more long-term move. This is a player who you're buying at a very young age, who you hope to kind of bed in over time and develop. And maybe, to me, it even speaks to the fact that the club now thinking not just about, obviously, the Grealish injury to the end of the season, but also, do we just move on from Jack Grealish entirely? Like, does this injury change the total outlook on any potential permanent move for him in the summer? So it's encouraging. We waited all window. Left wing would not have been maybe my position of need. It wasn't our position of need in the assessment that we released at the start of the month. But in these types of markets, January notoriously tough. You have to look for opportunity, and the opportunity may not have been there at right back for a player the committee could agree on. This seems to be, as you said just a moment ago, a low-risk move for a player with a high ceiling. In that sense, I think it makes a ton of sense. Really well spoken on my part there. With that, Shan, let's get back and talk about this Brighton match, because I think maybe not the most eventful, but Brighton have fallen on tough times of late, I would say. They're now, with this result, 1 win in their last 11 league matches, and also had a tough time against the Toffees of late, winless in their last 6 now home games against Everton. So talk us through Hertzler and the group that Brighton have put together this season. Mid-table for sure, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think, right, James, that they've been winless against us at home with kind of some of the teams that we've had going over there. So that to me is why I was optimistic that we would get a draw today. And of course, you and I both predicting that correctly. We'll get to score predictions, of course, later. But you look at the group, it's kind of just an interesting group because it's so talented, but it feels like one of those where I just feel like the sum of its parts aren't connecting as well as they should. Of course, Van Hecke and Lewis Dunk, who I think has taken a step back in terms of his performance levels this season, are the center back pairing. But then you look at De Kuyper and Ferdi Kagulu, who had, I thought, a very good game today. De Kuyper, of course, a big part in their goal. Very kind of attack-minded wing-backs that, of course, on Ferdy's standpoint, did a great job in Ndiaye. And then you look at that midfield, I think that's where they get a lot of their plaudits. Baliba, who once again also has kind of taken a step back this year, still an incredible prospect and a guy that has played very solid for them. Ayari, I think, has had a very good season for him, and of course bringing back Pascal Gross to the team, who's been just a great contributor, of course, to this match, but to his Brighton career has been invaluable, and I say that as the highest compliment. Diego Gomez is the one that drops. He's had a good season for them, so I thought that was a boost for us. And then you look at the strike force, it's just kind of interesting, right? Danny Welbeck is still performing at a high level. Somebody that's not intimidating, but you look at his numbers, does a very good job for them. And then Karo Matoma, he's still there, which is kind of shocking to me, but is still just somebody that will tear our wingbacks up if he gets the opportunity. Of course, today it was just the back four, truly. And then you look at Georgino Ruter, who I also think is a very talented player. It's just one of those teams that you look at their bench, they have a ton of options that they can bring off. So they've always had a talented bench. You look at Minte, of course, who's done some major damage to us in the past. But James, I thought you brought some great numbers from OptaUp and would love for you to share them.
Yeah, agreed with your assessment of Brighton. Minte's one, obviously very close to ending up at Everton, and he has really taken a big step this season in terms of increasing the level of his performances. But in terms of Brighton's style of play, they press. They have the lowest passes per defensive action in the league, which is basically just a measure of press intensity. But they've also had their struggles in front of goal. They have the third biggest expected goal under performance. They do like to have the ball. So they press and then they counter press. They're pretty aggressive off the ball. They also get into the box effectively, fourth in the Premier League in touches in the box per 90 with about 27. And what I thought was interesting, given Everton's tall lineup today, was they have very good set-piece defending. They have not given up many quality chances or goals from set pieces. The other piece that going into today I thought would maybe play a role is they've used the most subs. Shan, you mentioned they have a very quality bench. They use that bench, and they've also had the most goal contributions from substitutes this season in the Premier League with 9. So I thought that might play a little wrinkle. It ultimately didn't matter with Gross starting and scoring the only goal, but they have options. They can change games in certain ways using different personnel, and I thought it'd be very interesting how that would play out. But I think it turned out, as we get into the match itself, that Everton were the ones who would have to change the game, because starting things out, it was very much all Brighton. And not even just Brighton in ways that you might normally expect, dominating possession, which they did to start the match, but creating a lot of chances from set plays, which you'd think was kind of one of the main ideas of Moyes, starting with that huge back line, or at least as a byproduct of that, you would expect Everton to dominate in the air. But it's actually Danny Welbeck with a couple of very good chances early from set pieces. He has that back heel off of the corner, which ended up being, I think, a pretty good chance, even though it wasn't hit very hard. And then he had a header just 5 or 6 minutes later off of another corner that was a free header. And you're wondering, what was the point of having all these giant guys in here if we're just going to give up free headers off of set pieces? It's crazy. And then there was a nice, later on in the first half, their other big chance was Mitoma with a nice give and go, driving into the box and firing a shot that skidded just wide of the net. And then, otherwise, Shan, I think for Everton, going a lot to Njai, looking to feed Njai is really our only offensive outlet. And then I think Njai struggling as a result, because in some ways, when you look at that Everton lineup and you're the opposition, that's the real threat that you have to freeze out of the match. And I think they did that pretty effectively.
Yeah, I thought the first half kind of showed you the issues with the compact formation that we had and just the inability to really get any sort of threat on the width. And credit to Ferdi Kadaglu, I thought he did a really good job in Iliman Njai, right? So I think Illy was trying a lot of things. They just weren't working. And then you look at the build-up play. Jarrad's going to do his best, but he's not somebody that is going to be able to kind of, work together and give and go with, nor do you want him to, just given Brighton's ability on the attack and what they were showing in the first half. So it was a snooze fest, I think, in regards to our attack. But then, of course, they had, as you mentioned, a lot of dangerous moments. And there's really not much to talk about the first half besides just kind of pure domination. I thought we did a good job of kind of steadying the ship after that Mitoma shot. But outside of that, it was just Brighton fully deserved kind of a goal, and we're unlucky to get one. And you look at the XG, right? Just zeros across the board for Everton, which you don't really see actually often for just a complete, zero. So you got to almost kind of laugh at that, right? Just because there's some level of ineptitude on the attack. And then a 1.07, of course, for Brighton. You look at open play and set plays, as you mentioned, right? They were a threat on set plays, so it kind of even. It's an even share on that. And then it was really disappointing and kind of made you wonder what David Moyes would try to do at halftime.
It did, and I thought, despite the fact we started 4 center backs and 4 center mids, it was really surprising how ineffective we were at trying to play anything through the middle. Maybe you give Brighton credit for forcing a lot of stuff wide, but when you push a player like Harrison Armstrong wide, or you're pushing, even Dewsbury Hall and Garner at times had to drift wide to try to get on the ball, there just isn't that vertical threat besides Njai. And even Njai is not the type to run in behind. Armstrong certainly isn't. It's all ball to feet stuff. And so I think we were really, the possession battle actually didn't end up that one-sided. I think they ended up with roughly 54% possession in the first half, despite being like in the 70s, maybe the first 20 minutes or so. But Everton, little cleaner in possession because guys like Armstrong with Dewsbury Hall back in the starting lineup, guys who can hold on to the ball and retain it pretty well, but there just isn't really that player or that combination of players that are going to really threaten the opposition or really present many opportunities to break them down. So Everton blanked, maybe a little uncharacteristically. We've had some very poor first halves this season, there's no doubt about that, but not quite this bad. Like, not even a shot off target, much less on target. I think Leeds, we had 4 shots in the first half, but none on target. So extremely frustrating. It looked pretty bad at that point, but I will say, Everton were still off the ball, doing some things well. I think 60% on long balls. So if you're trying to, you think of a team that wants possession and wants to press, that is one of your outlets of looking long. And I think we did that pretty effectively. We also won our duels for the most part in the first half and really in the game as a whole. But we get into the second half and as we've alluded to, pretty dramatic reversal. Everton actually start to create some things. And in the 51st minute, about 6 minutes into the second half, our first real attacking move, you could probably say, and it's Tierno Barry and Dewsbury Hall in the build-up, both being involved effectively. Barry does very well to hold it up. Dewsbury Hall has a shot across the face of goal, has to kind of rotate his hips. It's a tough angle, but he doesn't put it that far wide. And you're thinking, okay, well, there's one. We got a shot. That's something to build on, put our foothold in the game, and we start to build. And then just a few minutes after that, there's another opportunity. This is the Jake O'Brien swinging across. Branthwaite, very good positioning here. A great flick-on header that goes right across the 6-yard box, but there's no one from Everton there. So chances starting to be created.
Yeah, it was a great response, James, and I think it was just good to see us put them a little bit on the back foot, right? Because that for us it relieved a little bit of the pressure, and it just felt like the lineup, just because no subs were made, right? It just felt like they were understanding some of the things that needed to happen to just have a better second half. You look at the 60th minute, our nemesis, Yankuba Minte, comes on for Georgina Rutter. And then the 67th minute, I mean, oh my God, this is where I think hearts dropped. And it's really unfortunate because I think there's just a lot of great things in this play from both teams. So you look at it, it's a huge chance for Tierno Barry as he pounces on a Brighton back pass into space, does the right thing and lays it off on a absolute silver platter for Kieran Dewsbury Hall. And I don't think, outside of Tierno Barry in form at the moment, there's not a guy on the pitch you want to take that shot. And he just puts it at a place where it's a great save by Verbruggen, but if you're Kieran Dewsbury Hall, I think you expect a lot more. And it's just kind of one of those where it just felt like it was our moment and we didn't capitalize.
Yeah, it's kind of near post, and he's trying to put it maybe toward the far post. Verbruggen, it's a great save with his foot. I mean, it's a good, no doubt about that. But point blank, you'd hope Dewsbury Hall could maybe just put it beyond his reach and really not give him any sort of a play on it. So, yeah, and that's one where you feel like, okay, we're not clearly going to create a ton of great chances. We just had easily our best one of the match, and we let it slip through our fingers. Is there more to come, or will we be punished for that poor finishing? And it turned out eventually it would, of course, be the former, or latter, rather, as Brighton make another couple of subs. They bring off Welbeck and De Kuyper for Costellas and Veltman. And I don't know, Everton also then, in the 2 minutes after that, corner to the far post. It's a very good, again, set-piece chance. I think Branthwaite's involved here, very nearly headed home. And then Brighton break the other way, and they have some threatening possession. They have in and around the final third, kind of picking at us. They sustain it for a couple of minutes, and then it's the goal. It's the gross goal. I don't know. I saw a lot of people lambasting our back line, and I think there is some maybe poor marking from Michael Keane here. Doesn't track his man, losing track of guys, but I don't know. Maybe it's disgraceful of me to say, but I give Brighton a little bit of credit. I mean, it's a nasty dummy from Costellas to leave the Tarkowski, no idea what's going on, gets completely rinsed, and then Gross is there crashing, and it's a good finish. Sean, am I giving them too much credit? Should Everton have defended this a little bit better?
No, like you, I very much support our community, but I was a little bit perplexed by that same reaction, and then you watch the goal. I understand the moment, right? I can completely appreciate where you have two great chances, you don't take advantage, and then you get beat But I think it's a great goal by Brighton. Like you mentioned, the dummy is great. The cross from De Kuyper is good. And then it's just a good finish by Pascal Gross, right? It's like nothing Pickford can do about it. It's just one of those where it's kind of a game of moments, right? Unfortunately, in recent times, we've been able to be clinical. And today we weren't, and it really showed what you can do and how you got punished by it. And yeah, it's credit to Brighton. I think it's just kind of one of those moments. It's how are we going to respond, right? Tough moment to happen. I think it's easy to put your head down, especially you have these chances. You're dominating in the second half. And then, of course, David Moyes does respond with a triple sub. And I give him credit for this because I think it really did change the game in our favor. So Tyler Dibbling, Charlie Alcaraz, which is great to see him healthy again. And, of course, same with Tim. Comes on for Kieran Dewsbury Hall, Armstrong, and Ghana, the right-wing threat. But I think, of course, today you have some natural kind of players coming on. So what were your thoughts on the subs, James? I thought it was good timing for them just given the way the game was going.
Yeah, I like the intent. It's six. You prefer maybe more proactive, not waiting until we go down, but it is the right combination. I don't think Ghana was that poor, but I think maybe I think minute management, if nothing else, from Moyes here. Dewsbury Hall just back from injury. You don't really want to risk him overextending himself. Armstrong has played a lot of minutes for this Everton team and just not really in today a position where I think it really suits him. You bring on Dibbling, give him 12 minutes, a chance to make an impact. Charlie, always great as a sub. The chaos that he brings, the relentlessness to drive the ball forward, willingness to get on the ball, I think was useful. And Irabunum, same thing, can introduce a bit of chaos to the game. I think he did it in a very bad way within his first 5 minutes of coming on, but eventually kind of course corrected. Did pick up a yellow, but managed to keep it mostly under control. Unfortunately, we're almost right after this, almost punished pretty aggressively. Matoma scores off a set-piece routine, but thankfully VAR comes to the rescue for us, ruling it out for offside. That would have sucked to go down 2-0. But it really didn't feel like and had a way back into this game. It did feel like Brighton were kind of the more likely team to maybe get a second versus Everton finding the equalizer. But late on, I think the real push for Everton in the final minutes, which is partially kicked off by Nathan Patterson and Beto coming on for Branthwaite and Barry. I think that helped a lot. Saw Pato ring swing in a really nice cross in the 89th minute, very close to the death. Michael Keane finishing abilities continue to be just remarkable. How he turns his hips and manages to kind of carry this one on target is really impressive. It's a good shot, and you're thinking, okay, well, if Keno is getting opportunities, maybe we'll continue to push. But there isn't that much time left. The 6 minutes of stoppage time were a welcome relief because we certainly needed all of them. But we push for it. Hertzler makes one last sub, bringing on Milner for Pascal Gross, which James Milner just will never retire. He will play until he is 100 years old. But just 2 minutes after that, it's the moment that really defines the whole match, and really a huge dramatic moment for Everton in the context of the season to rescue a point here from Beto, the birthday boy. Garner swinging the cross in. Lewis Dunk with a poor header, kind of moves it over to Jake O'Brien, who had moved over to left back with the bringing on of Nathan Patterson. And Jake's crashing right place, right time, has a great shot and forces Verbruggen into kind of an awkward parry right into the path of Beto, who right place, right time, good intelligence, and bangs it home. It's a tremendous moment. It's very exciting.
Yeah, this is, I think, just some really good work by Jake. I think also Garner and shout out to Nathan Patterson. I think he had a few other good moments in that build-up. And so it's just, I thought Moyes did a really good job with those two subs too, because you could just see how impactful they were. And then, like you mentioned, James, just right time, right place, but also just right intent in regards to reading that kind of moment. You look at just kind of the replay of it, and there's like 3 or 4 Brighton defenders like 6 to 8 yards away from Beto, right? So it's not even like he almost had much competition from there. I think Van Hecke was the closest guy to him, and he missed him like by a few seconds. So just a really great goal, and I think it's kind of deserved, right? I mean, you look at what happened in the first half. I think pure domination from them. We really take kind of the bull by the horns and really just get into the game, have a few great chances. Of course, they take theirs. But I think the vibes are still very positive, right? When you can kind of snatch a draw at the death, and the gods just do not want Brighton to win at home against us. It's not in the cards right now.
Yeah, giving them an absolute nightmare of a time, and there'll be some very sad fans coming or headed home from the Amex today. And to cap it all off, I mean, it is basically the last kick of the game. It's tremendous from Beto. The anxiety I felt during that VAR review when I thought that they might rule Tark offside for interfering not with the Beto shot, but with Jake O'Brien's original shot. He has nothing to do with that play. It's a ridiculous review. So thankfully, they wave it off. They keep the goal. It's delightful. The away fans get a deserved cause to celebrate and sing their way out of the stadium. And it caps off a second half where I think Everton, clearly the better team, 52% possession, which part of that driven by the later stages of the game as Brighton sort of, after they scored, definitely went into their shell a little bit to preserve the lead. But 7 shots for Everton, 4 of which were on target, 1.2 XG to Brighton's 0.26. And you mentioned it, Shan. I mean, 2 big chances. It's the Dewsbury Hall chance and the Beto chance, which together are roughly 1 of our 1.2 XG. So those are 2 massive chances. We take one of them. It pays off and gets us into a point where, when you look at the game as a whole, a very balanced affair overall. We finished 1.29 XG for Brighton, 1.2 for Everton. They had 11 shots to our 7, so a little bit better. But Everton off of the ball, I think were pretty much the better team throughout. I mean, finished with 23 tackles. Brighton had just 19. 66 duels won to Brighton's 49. So doing their job to make things difficult, pressure the team when Brighton had the ball. Also, thankfully, even though the Welbeck early opportunities were maybe a little bit scary, did end up winning 66% of the aerial duels in the match. So those tall guys do in fact pay off. Also, I think the last thing I wanted to call out, touches in the opposition box. It was so one-sided in the first half, but in the second half, Everton dominated that area of the game, much more threatening, and actually finished with 27 touches in Brighton's box to their just 23. So a worthy comeback, I think, deservedly getting a point out of this one. A win might have been just a little bit lucky on our part. But you create 2 big chances, you convert one of them, and you escape with a point away. It's another good away showing for the Toffees, or a good away result, rather, I should say.
Yeah, it's great to see our strikers continuing to score, right?
Yes.
So that's so happy for Beto, of course, as James mentioned, the birthday boy. So good to see him on the score sheet. And like you mentioned, I think asking for a win might have been a little bit greedy, but just especially the way we scored and just how we left it to the death. But a lot of good stats here, even clearances, right? 30 for them, 20 for us. So it just shows intent on our part, especially in the second half, for us to kind of continue to challenge them. And yeah, I think overall, it's just amazing how we can continue to get results with, when you look at the lineup originally, right? The personnel does not lend itself to kind of a sexy lineup whatsoever. But credit to the team once again for fighting, and it puts us in, a good position once again on the table.
Yeah, and I think it's, maybe we're being a little too complimentary to Everton in some ways, where, look, we got a last-second equalizer. I mean, this could have been a very different narrative if we had finished the game 1-0. It would have been, once again, we don't take our chances, yada, yada, yada. But the drama of the moment and the excitement of getting a point when you're so certain that there's basically nothing left to play for is just going to skew the analysis of the match. And we want to try to maybe steer things a little bit more positively in a result like today. And so we're going to do that. So if you have any comments, please leave them below. Leave us, let us know if we're being a little too complimentary towards David Moyes' men today. But I think there's, once again, one guy who stands out head and shoulders above the rest on the Everton side today.
I mean, this guy's nickname should be DEFCON at a certain point, because it's just the amount of defensive contributions that James Garner is making is quite incredible. And of course, he's man of the match. I gave him his kind of break, just given the new contract, but I had to kind of go back to my first love. And so you look at 10 of 17 duels won, most defensive actions out of any player. You look at 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 for 3 on long balls. Just once again, just an absolute menace in the midfield, right? It's just good to see a player that we feel as promising with his skill level, right? Just be such a menace when it comes to battling in the midfield. I think he's kind of taken that role head on. and especially you saw it a lot, especially with Ghana being out. But even now, you're still seeing it with just even our two. You look at just Ghana and Armstrong's numbers. It's like almost James Garner's just like taking all the defensive actions for himself. And he kickstarted the goal, right, with the cross. Of course, not his greatest cross in the world, but I think it just shows that the guy is contributing in so many different ways. And I can't say enough good things about him this season. He's definitely increased his market value, as well as we're so happy to have him, really tied down on the contracts. Credit to James Garner, just continue to stay healthy, knock on wood, and just continue to be a good contributor the second half of the season.
Yeah, the numbers really line up with the performances. I mean, he is all action. He just puts himself about, gets involved. And I think with you seeing Ghana, maybe we have a bigger conversation about Ghana on a different day, but certainly less active in terms of the way he's stuffing the stat sheet. I mean, it was not uncommon for much of Ghana's Everton career to talk about, 5, 6, 7 tackles for Ghana, recoveries in the double digits, things like that. And we're just not seeing that type of production from him. I still think he offers a lot to this team, and I don't foresee him being displaced by really any one of our current midfielders when fit, although it's interesting Merlin Roll wasn't used today. Maybe more on that at a later date. But for my good performance, I went with Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. You could say maybe his fault for wasting a good opportunity on the big chance, but I just think having him back in the starting lineup helps us so much in the final third, maintaining dangerous possession, so smooth on the ball, facilitating, distributing, and really a lot of the good attacking play that we had came through him, and this is just the start of him kind of integrating back into the team. So very exciting that Dewsbury-Hall's back fit. Couple honorable mentions. This one's just funny to me. James Tarkowski was rock solid today. Again, the back line continues to shift around him constantly, but he remains ever present. And despite being partnered with Michael Keane today, thought was very solid. He won all of his duels. He was 4 for 4 in ground duels, 5 for 5 in aerial duels. And the funny part is he actually led Everton in touches in Brighton's box with 6. So make of that what you will in terms of how truly threatening we were when one of your center backs is the guy who's got the most touches in the box. I think Dewsbury-Hall and Njai had 4 apiece. Njai, we talked a little bit about how much we relied on him in the first half. We went away from that quite a bit in the second half, and I wonder if that contributed at all to kind of the way that maybe in some ways we were more effective going forward. He finished the game with 46 touches, which is the least of any player, outfield player on either team to play the full 90 minutes. But in the absence of him being able to have an impact with the ball at his feet, which he's very good at, he was second on the team in defensive contributions. He had 5 tackles and 5 recoveries. So I know where we really want to see Njai is in and around the box, ball at his feet, causing problems. But when that wasn't really what was happening, I thought he still did a really good job maintaining that defensive work rate, and so wanted to give him a call out.
Yeah, like you mentioned, James worked really hard today, right? And even though his offensive side of the game just wasn't there, just for a few different kind of reasons, I thought his work rate was great. So can't say enough about Illy and just not letting that kind of affect his overall game. Get into the listener comments. I think there's some good ones. We'll start with the Toffee Blues at Everton Newsfeed. Starts with our boy Adam Asnew. There's opportunities for him to go, and we'll decide that in the next few days. I'm not sure that he would get the opportunities in the position we bought him to play, so I need to think how I can do it. And that's David Moyes and letting Asnew leave on loan. I mean, James, I feels like it's inevitable at this point that he should go on loan.
Yeah, I don't agree with it. Today, I think it would have been a tall task to throw Asnew last minute into the lineup, given the danger that you're kind of hedging against with Brighton on the wings. And I think kind of the same thing with Nathan Patterson. Like that is, I may not agree with it, but I understand why Moyes would go with the strong, tall. And honestly, for center backs by trade, Branthwaite and Jacob Ryan, both very good one-on-one defenders. Maybe not in the wide areas against wingers, but it would have been a really tall task for Adam Asnew. And at this point, agree with you, Shan. Like, if Moyes doesn't rate him, doesn't see him getting minutes at left back, he has to play. He has to play because even though he might not be ready right now, he's an unbelievable prospect. And we're doing both him and I think Everton's long-term future a huge disservice by him rotting away on the bench. So be that as it is, be whatever, Moyes has his opinion on the player. I think we're very clearly on record of disagreeing with that. But if he's the future, he has to play, he has to develop. So I think the loan is just something that seems to happen. Where he goes on loan will be very interesting if that does happen. Like, you don't send him to the championship after he's played in La Liga, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the curiosity comes from, because I doubt he's going to go to another Premier League club. It just doesn't feel like if he's going to play here, he's going to play somewhere else. And then you look, I don't think the championship, just especially too, you think of most of those teams, right, are probably either wanting a loan to stay away from relegation or kind of cement themselves in the top six. So it feels like to me that it would almost be either going back to Spain or another kind of team abroad. Just curious. I have no, it's not to say I don't have any doubt, but I do feel like the club will try to put him, if they won't put him in the right situation, they'll just keep him here, right? It just feels like something like that, where I feel like the club's been pretty good in this facet, but remains to be seen, right? 48 hours, we'll know.
And there's one last thing on that, Sean.
Yeah, of course.
There will be no shortage of teams that will want him on loan, like across Europe.
100%.
He's just such a highly regarded prospect. So, we'll just have to monitor and see how it goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the second one, I think this is an interesting one by Andrew Schroeder. Relief to get a point there. Credit to the players. Hard to final whistle. Really disappointing for Moyes to play Branthwaite and Jake out of position just to shoehorn Keane in the starting lineup. Poor Michael Keane, he gets picked on all the time. But it does kind of bring up a question. James, do you think Keane was shoehorned in the lineup or just there simply because Mykolenko was out?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do think Moyes rates Michael Keane a lot higher than most of the fan base. And Michael Keane has been passable this season in terms of performance. Always liable for an odd error or something like that. I think he's been relatively steady, but I do think this is just a real curveball thrown to David Moyes the day before or the day of the game with Mykolenko's injury. He's not going to play Asnu. Patterson, there's things he could have done differently, but I don't know. Starting Patterson or Asnu against their wingers would have been really nerve-wracking. And Michael Keane has been fit. He's just been suspended. I do think it was probably just due to the Mykolenko last-minute thing. Now, we'll see how that develops now. If Keane stays in the lineup over the next few games, Mykolenko comes back, and, Jake O'Brien remains at right back. Now you also have that, you have the added layer of you just have to get Jarrad Branthwaite into this team, obviously, any way you can. Ideally at center back, but he's our best player, arguably. Top 3 players, best center back. So he has to play. So I think it pretty clearly means that Keane's time in the starting lineup has to be limited.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this was truly just game state in regards to the Mykolenko injury. I'm just curious, especially because it really feels like the back 3 worked against Leeds. I know it's a very short sample size, but I am curious when Mykolenko's healthy, right? Of course, he's going to be part of the equation in either case, but it would really be interesting if there were certain spaces where maybe he goes with the back 3 of Jarrad, Tark, and then Jake, and then puts Pato on right back, just because it feels like Pato's just played really well, and it's kind of one of those situations. I think you look at who you're facing, of course, as you mentioned, James. I don't blame him for the 4 center backs. It's ugly, right? I think we know that, but the idea of just kind of putting Nathan Patterson and kind of leave. I mean, we've already, said that about Nathan, right, in regards to certain matchups where it's just been not good for him in regards to that specific spot. So it'll be interesting to monitor, right? Especially, imagine if we bring somebody in the deadline. We'll see. So the last listener comment is a good one, and it's kind of twofold. We're going to get to a few specific things in this, and that's by Mark, Southeast Michigan Toffee. Questionable lineup choices, only accentuated with the current lack of creativity. And then I think the second one is, at what point can we say we're comfortably on the beach? Which I think if you ask Everton fans this in January, they'll almost be confused by the question.
I mean, I think we're comfortably on the beach now. It's really a question of, what are our aspirations upward? There's no way we're getting sucked into any sort of danger. And so it's do you just accept kind of the reality of this year's Everton, which is it seems like we're comfortably mid-table. And I think there's no way to frame it other than that is a clear step forward and improvement from recent seasons. Whether we have aspirations for Europe, David Moyes keeps kind of flirting with it in press conferences and whatnot. And it is up for grabs. Teams are not really staking their claim to those top spots. And so the door will remain open, I think, for the foreseeable future. But I think we're very comfortable. I think you need to motivate the players. You obviously want to aspire for more and push for the very best finish you possibly can. But there's no danger here. I mean, and in some ways it may be boring to some, but to me it's just such a huge relief to not have to go through a really stressful end of the season. And it's really only, the worst possible outcome is we finish 13th, 12th, something like that. And the best case scenario is we squeak into Europe. And to me, that's a really good position to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I think you look at just kind of form and whatnot, and even if, let's just say, one of these teams at the bottom go into form, I mean, Everton, as of today, are 13 points above the zone, right? And you just know that they'll continue to get points, although might not be the best watch at times, right? This team has just shown you, even if they go on a poor run of form, that they'll rebound. I think with David Moyes, though, on the first question with the injuries, I think he's done as good as he can, right? It's just a tough situation. You can argue about the usage of a player like Dwight McNeil and whatnot, as we have, and I think there's always going to be kind of these questionable decisions from a manager you just won't agree with. But you look at the hand that he's been dealt, right? It's just not the greatest hand, especially with how many of those injuries happened at once. And then you look at Jack Grealish, I think how reliant he's been on him, and I get why, just given how important he is. But I think he's done a fine job, right? And I think people that are calling for his job, I understand, but I don't think he, in any way, shape, or form, is the problem right now with Everton not being higher in the table. If anything, I think he deserves credit for where we are.
Yeah, I mean, 6 points in our last 5 games, really one loss. Obviously, since Brentford, we have not been beaten in the league. We had the cup match in between that, which was a terrible one. But David Moyes has, I think, navigated this period pretty admirably, done very well, getting some results with some just diabolically unbalanced teams. But as we get into this position of being kind of on the beach, it does make you wonder sort of what are the next steps. Because Moyes clearly improved things year over year, but when do the club feel as though maybe Moyes has kind of taken us as far as he can, or have aspirations for taking that next sort of leap in terms of quality of manager? And I don't mean that as disrespect to David Moyes. I have a ton of respect for him, but someone who is better aligned with where Everton want to be, where we're comfortable playing, developing, actively trying to get these young guys integrated, which I think he's done a little bit better job of late. But it just makes me wonder, like, where Moyes sits.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. And then that gets us to our thoughts and prayers segment, which is actually quite interesting this week. I almost have to mention Crystal Palace in some regard, just because it truly feels like the sky is falling. And I don't know what has gotten into Jean-Philippe Mateta the last month, but it just feels like anytime I go on Twitter, there is a new team that he wants to be a part of. The newest is AC Milan. Of course, he was just knocking on the door to play for Sean Dyche and the other 5 strikers that are there. So I really hope that he gets to the spot that he wants. But it just feels like a real reversal in regards to mindset and attitude from the start of the season. Got to include Brighton here. Of course, 1 win in 11, and the streak continues about not beating Everton at home. James, you included this comment from Blanco Nino. I beto it stings to be a Brighton fan right now. The only thing that would have been worse is Njai scoring and then doing the seagull, right? So, and of course, Beto doing his LeBron James impression, not much better. So tough for Brighton right now. And of course for us, you look at the league table, right? If they would have won, they would have tied us. At that point actually is very valuable in hindsight. And then James and I are recording this a little bit later today, so this one is a really fun one to include for me. West Ham, joining Everton in how to throw a 2-0 lead catastrophically. Of course, 2-0 lead on the road. Very good kind of performance in the first half. And then it all comes crashing down. There's a fight at the end. Jean-Claire Todibo, who's probably their best center back, is going to probably be out for 3 games. It's just, we've seen this before, right? From an Everton point of view. West Ham, just a tough time at the bottom. Kind of question gets answered earlier. Do you feel like you're on the beach? And when you see things like that, you feel pretty confident in regards to some of these teams, picking up significant form and passing you. So that puts our thoughts and prayer segment done for the day. Score predictions, a bunch. So credit to the group. We'll start with Cam Liza, Harper Short Canvas, myself and James. So credit to us. Pat on the back. Yep. I love the bow and arrow from Tierno. Holderness, Drew Berg, 1878, and of course Mike, who was having a great time today in the Discord. You look, we're keeping a running tally, so continue to put those in, and please, just for my sanity, put them in the spreadsheet. It just makes it a lot easier. I can't ask enough, and I will continue to include those that aren't, but I want you to put it in the spreadsheet as well as the scorer. So thank you. And then upcoming pod, we play Fulham next on the road, and then a quick transfer recap if anything comes up, which, of course, as we mentioned, just seems like something exciting is coming. But James, I'll leave it to you to wrap us up.
That's going to do it for us. Just a reminder, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. All of our links will be in the description. Follow us on socials, all of that good stuff. And join our Discord. Great community. And we will be with you next time. Until then, up the Toffees.